I've run this type of lesson with S3 classes and with higher. I had a plan for an At5 one that I was going to do as sort of exam revision, but obviously that didn't happen. It can all be paper-based. So some people are running virtual escape rooms. I've seen those for a few subjects, like on Google Forms or Microsoft Forms. I think having some physical objects does add to it, but I know that obviously at the moment it's not really something that's possible. I'm going to try creating a virtual version of these and try to sort of do that as a revision lesson in my higher class before the prelims. At the end, I'll share some resources and sort of general advice about what I found making it. I'm a little bit careful about this one because, like I say, my sixth years are pretty sneaky, and I think they'll try and find the solution if they get wind that this is going. So I will share it, but probably in kind of closed groups like the CS Slack group, and I think somebody will maybe post a link to that in the chat. So if you're not a member, you can join that. So what do I mean by an escape room? I realise there's quite a lot on this slide, but it's just sort of an overview, and then I'll look at them in detail. So in this context, it's a whole lot of puzzles that all connect to each other. In the S3 one, there was a little scenario. There was supposed ransomware on the school server that would delete all their work within the hour if they didn't stop it. And being third years, they kind of believed that. So this one you're seeing is for hire, and it was a mix of virtual and physical clues, but they're all sort of in this computing context. I'll not dwell too much on the individual puzzles right now, but the idea is just how they're all connected together. So one puzzle solving that leads on to another, but there's not a completely linear path through it. So some things they could get more than one way, and sometimes they maybe made it a little bit harder for themselves than they had to. I would say it was quite intimidating when I decided I was going to try and make it. But I found that if I just sort of jumped in and started making some of the puzzles, that worked better than trying to sort of plan it in the abstract. So that would be my kind of tip if you were going to do it. Just start on some of the puzzles you could make, and they'll all kind of naturally fall into place, rather than maybe trying to over-plan it. To give you some examples then, you can see there was a puzzle to do with the fetch execute cycle, because that was something that they were struggling with, remembering that. And then when they put all that together, that gave them a code, unlocked a little box, just bought some sort of cheap cash boxes on eBay. Inside that, there's a torch, and the UV torch they could use to read messages that were written in invisible ink. And then on a pack of playing cards, right, there's a message written on that. There's a program that, going through the program, leads them to check which card it is. They sort of scan that card with a torch, and they realise there's something hidden written on there. And you get the idea, right? It's all one puzzle leads on to another. This was how it started then. So this was the S3 one that I did when I was a probationer. So I've sort of hidden the school badge there because it was a different school as well. As you can see, there's a little scenario about ransomware. So that was on the screen when the pupils came in. They didn't know that this was going to be happening, so I sort of kept it a surprise for them. They came in, period 1 in the morning, like this is on the screen, there's extra stuff up on the walls. So I was trying to kind of build a bit of atmosphere about it. Obviously, sort of locking pupils in a room isn't going to go down very well, so it wasn't really an escape room, right? But there was this sort of password they had to crack to stop the ransomware deleting all their files. So it was trying to kind of build up the tension. They'd been doing a little bit about sort of computing history, and we'd been looking at Bletchley Park because there was a big anniversary coming up. So you can see there's some photos of older sort of computing tech. There's a BBC Micro, there's an old Mac, there's Colossus, obviously a lot older than those two. So they sort of recognised that picture, right? They knew what Colossus was because we'd done it a week or two before. In the database, there was something that sort of led them to think Colossus would be special, and then When they went and looked at that bit of paper, they realised it had a code on the back. That code then led them, so they could put that code into one of the other puzzles, into a program, and the output of the program would then give them like yet another clue to another puzzle, and so on. You can see they were given a folder to start with as well. So there was a mix of sort of virtual and paper things. So there was a database, an HTML file, and a text file called secretcode.txt, and most of them did start with that one. The database was passworded, so the way they got the password to the database was from editing the CSS on the web page. So the web page had sort of it looked blank. Actually, there was an image on there that was like a hidden file, the image, and if they changed the background color of the page, they would see what was in the picture. Fast forward a little bit, and coming up to prelim time last year, I made this as a revision exercise with my higher class. So we did it in December. That's why you can see some tinsel in some of the photos. It worked out as a surprisingly good way, actually, to keep up the sort of motivation and apparently the attendance in the last week. We managed to still be kind of working on the Thursday when they all thought they were going to wind down, you know. They claimed, a couple of them, that they'd sort of come in because they were curious what we were doing. I don't know whether that's actually true, but it would be nice to believe. It sort of summarised the course so far. So for them, that was like software development, computer systems, and databases. There was a little bit of web in it, but it was all N5 web because they hadn't done the higher web topic yet. And then because it was the higher class, I added in some physical things. So there's obviously like the lock boxes and padlocks and things, but also just some of the clues are like hidden. You know, they were on the back of a chair or like underneath a table or something. So there was a little bit of exploring for them. You can see there one of the cupboards is like taped off. So I told them that anything that had that tape on it, they were allowed to sort of play with. So that like my desk and, you know, some of the other cupboards are off limits, they're out of play. But anything that looked as if it was visibly part of it, that was kind of part of the clues. So just some other photos here of what we had. You can see there were some messages like written in ASCII. There were some Caesar ciphers, which obviously they didn't specifically do as part of higher, but you know, they got the idea what was going on there. I have to say quite a lot of those were just red herrings, but it was quite fun to wind them up. They were a very, very competitive class, so it was kind of fun actually seeing them getting really, really into these. They spend ages cracking the puzzle, and then they realised it was just a bit of a wind up. We had some paper Parsons problems, so like strips of paper that had bits of code. Put the code in the right order, and then they realised that there's something maybe written on the back of it, so it's kind of like a jigsaw, and that was a clue to like a password to the database or to open a box or something like that, and that had maybe another clue in it, another program or an SQL statement or something like that. You can see there's a couple of sort of bits of paper there like that were just stuck around the room. That's quite small, so it was pretty subtle, and they didn't find that at first. I don't know, I might change that if I did it again in future. But that had the steps of the fetch execute cycle, and that was the kind of thing they had to put these in order. There's a dictionary as well. So there was a clue somewhere that kind of alluded to a data dictionary. There were some books on a desk, and they realised one of them was a dictionary. They go and look at it, and actually it was a sort of lockbox thing, that sort of fake book, a dictionary, and then that had a clue inside it as well. Then, yeah, they sort of finishing up with one that was instructions. So they needed the UV torch out of one of the boxes to find that, to read these instructions. It was like a blank page that said instructions. And you can just see there the files they had and the web page they had to edit. The database required a password to access, so they got that password by reading the web page or by editing the web page. So, just kind of in summary here, I found it worked really well as a revision resource. it links all the topics together. So things like edit the web page, that gets you into the database. And I thought that was quite important because I don't want them to become sort of too compartmentalized, where we study one topic and then the next topic and then the next. And even just looking at some of the exam questions that mix up topics between the question. They enjoyed it. It was a good opportunity for a bit of collaboration. They got really competitive. Some of them got really quite into it, a little bit heated, but you know, they're a good group and it was fine. They like all the kind of wee personal touches, so like running jokes and stuff, we could kind of build that into it. And because we're a senior class, you know, I had a lot of that kind of banter with them. I think our subject obviously lends itself to a bit of problem solving, so I think that worked from that point of view. It was kind of natural anyway. And just sort of as I finish up, in terms of where the resources are, I think Tony's or Luna's just posting the Slack link. I'm post this in the Slack group. I've shared it before in there, so I'll repost it. And I know some people downloaded it. If you're not a member there, I would strongly recommend it. Like I said, I'm a wee bit wary of this one getting out. I'd love to hear if people use any of these resources, but you know, maybe just be careful about spoilers.